Hello guys. Welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash became the Battle Frontier Master and his prize was a harem led by Anabel, Lucy, and Greta. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The crown of dust. The air inside the battle pyramid tasted of crushed limestone and ozone. It was a heavy, choking dust that coated the back of the throat, the kind that only settled after something massive had been broken. Ash Ketchum wiped a smear of grit from his cheek. His breathing was ragged, a harsh rhythm against the sudden, deafening silence of the arena. Across the cracked expanse of the battlefield, the dust cloud swirled, obscuring the titan that had dominated the last hour of his life. "Septile," Ash said. His voice wasn't a shout, he didn't have the air for it, but it carried the sharp edge of absolute command. "Do not relax. Watch the rubble." 10 yards away, the forest Pokémon stood amidst a crater of fractured slate. The blades on Septile's arms were glowing with a fading, verdant light, humming with the residual energy of that last leaf blade. Septile's chest heaved, its reptile eyes narrowed to slits, scanning the debris where the Regirock had fallen. For a long moment, nothing moved. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Even the referee, hovering on his platform, seemed afraid to call it. Then, the pile of rocks shifted. Not with the mechanical whir of the golem rising, but with the hollow clatter of defeat. The massive stone arm of the legendary golem slumped sideways, the glowing braille pattern on its face flickering out into dormant gray stone. "Regirock is unable to battle." The referee's voice cracked through the PA system, echoing strangely in the vast, enclosed space. "The winner is Septile. The match goes to Ash Ketchum." The tension in Ash's shoulders snapped. He didn't cheer. He didn't jump. He simply exhaled, a long, shuddering breath that seemed to expel the weight of the entire Kanto region from his lungs. He looked at Septile, who turned back to him, giving a curt, satisfied nod before sinking to one knee, exhausted. "You were incredible," Ash murmured, walking over to place a hand on Septile's shoulder. The Pokémon leaned into the touch, its skin cool despite the heat of the battle. "Rest now." He recalled Septile in a flash of red light, clipping the ball to his belt with a practiced, weary motion. From the other side of the arena, Brandon recalled the Regirock. The Pyramid King looked older than he had at the start of the match. He walked across the ruined field, his heavy boots crunching on the gravel. He stopped in front of Ash, towering over him, but the dynamic had shifted. He wasn't looking down at a challenger anymore, he was looking across at an equal. "I have guarded this frontier for 20 years, Brandon said, his voice like grinding stones. "I have broken arrogance and tested spirits. But today, I saw neither arrogance nor hesitation. I saw a storm." Brandon extended his hand. In it lay the brave symbol. It was gold, heavy, and etched with intricate designs that seemed to catch the dim emergency lights of the pyramid. "Take it," Brandon said. "You have conquered the battle frontier." Ash reached out. His fingers brushed the cold metal. "Excellent work, Ash, truly magnificent." The voice cut through the solemnity like a knife. Scott emerged from the shadows of the entrance tunnel, clapping his hands slowly. The man was wearing his signature Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses, but his usual jovial bounce was gone. He walked with a predator's grace, flanking Ash and Brandon. Ash closed his fist around the brave symbol. "Thanks, Scott, it's finally over." "Over?" Scott chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Ash, my boy, you've misunderstood the game. The battle frontier isn't a tournament, it's an interview." Ash frowned, his grip on the symbol tightening. "What are you talking about?" The massive blast doors of the pyramid began to rumble. Through the cracks, the sound of rotors beat against the metal hull. Dozens of them. The noise was growing louder, accompanied by the screech of heavy machinery locking onto the exterior of the pyramid. "The frontier isn't a tourist attraction," Scott said, his voice dropping an octave. He took off his sunglasses, revealing eyes that were cold and calculating. "It is an autonomous sovereign zone. A kingdom of one. And the frontier brains aren't gym leaders, Ash. They're generals. They're wardens against things the Pokémon League is too frightened to name." Scott gestured to the ceiling as the sound of magnetic locks clanking into place reverberated through the structure. "By defeating Brandon, you didn't just win a badge. You inherited the throne. You are the frontier master now. Ash looked at Brandon. The Pyramid King didn't deny it. He merely crossed his arms, his expression grim. Scott, Ash said, his voice low. Why does it sound like we're under attack? Because the Pokemon League doesn't like it when a new king is crowned, Scott replied smoothly. Especially one they can't control. They're here to take the keys, Ash. They're here to liquidate the frontier before you can legally claim it. Ash turned toward the main entrance. The blast doors groaned as a plasma cutter began to slice through the thick steel, sparking a shower of molten orange. Pikachu, Ash said softly. Pika. The electric mouse on his shoulder sparked, cheeks crackling with high-voltage aggression. Open the doors, Ash commanded, his voice echoing in the hall. Ash, wait. Brandon started. Open them. If they want in, let them in. Brandon hesitated, then punched a code into his wrist computer. The hydraulic hiss was deafening as the heavy doors parted. Sunlight flooded the dusty arena, blindingly bright, but it was quickly blocked by silhouettes. A dozen men in sleek, dark gray tactical armor swarmed into the room, flanked by hovering Magnezone units. They didn't look like police. They moved with military precision, raising assault rifles that hummed with energy dampeners, weapons designed to neutralize Pokemon attacks. At the center of the formation walked a man in a pristine white suit. He was thin, holding a tablet, looking at the ruined arena with a sneer of distaste. This was an administrator, a man who killed with signatures, not swords. Ash Ketchum, the man said, his voice amplified by a small collar mic. I am Agent Silas Thorne of the Global League Oversight Committee. You are in possession of restricted League property. He pointed a gloved finger at the brave symbol in Ash's hand. Hand over the artifact and step away from the Frontier Brains. This facility is now under the jurisdiction of the Obsidian Trust. Ash didn't move. He stood amidst the rubble, dust on his face, his clothes torn from the battle. He looked small against the paramilitary force, yet he felt immovable. I just won this, Ash said calmly. It belongs to me. It is a weapon of mass destruction disguised as a trophy, Thorne said, checking his watch. We are not here to negotiate with a child. Seize him. Secure the brains. The soldiers stepped forward. The Magnezones hummed, charging their magnets. Ash's hand went to his belt, but before he could release a Pokemon, the air temperature in the pyramid dropped 20 degrees in a single second. Stop. The word wasn't spoken. It was projected directly into the minds of everyone in the room. It carried a psychic weight so heavy that two of the tactical soldiers stumbled, clutching their helmets. From the eastern tunnel, Anabel walked out. The Salon Maiden wore her violet suit, but her eyes were glowing with a terrifying, luminous purple light. The air around her rippled. She didn't look like the shy girl Ash had battled before. She looked like a goddess of judgment. You are trespassing in the Sovereign's court, Anabel said, her voice echoing psychically. She stopped at Ash's right side, turning to face the soldiers. A barrier of psychic energy shimmered into existence in front of them, a translucent wall of purple glass. The empath, Thorne scoffed. Neutralize her. Try it, a husky voice purred from the shadows above. Something long and serpentine uncoiled from the rafters. Lucy dropped from the ceiling, landing in a crouch on Ash's left. Her Seviper hissed, its bladed tail rattling menacingly. Lucy stood up slowly, smoothing her hair. Her eyes were sharp, venomous. She looked at the soldiers not with fear, but with the hungry look of a predator deciding which throat to rip out first. You boys have lovely armor, Lucy said, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Shame it doesn't filter neurotoxins. We're done talking, a third voice barked. The ground shook as Greta, the arena tycoon, kicked open the side doors. She didn't walk. She sprinted, vaulting over a pile of rubble to land in front of Ash, completing the triangle. She cracked her knuckles, her Medicham mirroring the stance beside her. You want the master? Greta grinned, bouncing on the balls of her feet, eager for violence. You gotta go through the vanguard. And I haven't hit anything all day. Ash looked at them, Anabel, Lucy, Greta. They weren't just defending him. They were surrounding him, a Praetorian guard shielding their emperor. Thorne's expression tightened. This is treason. All of you. Hand over Ketchum, and you keep your pensions. Anabel glanced at Ash. The glow in her eyes softened for a fraction of a second, a wave of reassurance flooding his mind. We're yours, Ash. Command us. Ash blinked. The weight of Scott's words slammed into him. The prize. He looked at the soldiers, then at Thorn. The fatigue from the battle with Brandon vanished, replaced by a cold clarity. He realized he wasn't a trainer on a journey anymore. He was the line in the sand. Scott, Ash said, not looking back. Yes, Master? Scott's voice was devoid of its usual playfulness. Can this pyramid fly? It has suborbital capabilities, yes. Ash looked at Thorn. Get off my ship. Thorn signaled the soldiers, fire. Time seemed to slow. Pikachu, Thunderbolt. Greta, keep them back. Lucy, cover the flanks. Anabel, shields up. Ash's commands were instantaneous. Greta moved first, a blur of martial arts motion. She didn't attack the soldiers directly, she struck the ground. Hariyama, earthquake. Her massive sumo Pokemon materialized and slammed its palms into the floor. The shockwave knocked the soldiers off their feet before they could pull their triggers. Lucy was a shadow. Seviper, smokescreen. Shuckle, sludge bomb. A thick, purple fog erupted, blinding the tactical team. Through the haze, the sickening hiss of acid-melting tactical armor could be heard, followed by panicked shouts. Anabel stood still, her eyes closed. The bullets that were fired blindly into the smoke stopped in midair, suspended by her telekinesis, before dropping harmlessly to the floor. Ash didn't stay back. He surged forward into the smoke. He wasn't using a Pokemon, he was using his own body. He saw a soldier raising a rifle toward Pikachu. Ash slid under the barrel, sweeping the man's legs out from under him and driving an elbow into his solar plexus. The soldier folded. Scott. Get us in the air, Ash roared, grabbing a stunned Magnezone by its Magnerock appendages and using its own momentum to fling it into another guard. Initiating launch sequence. Scott yelled from the control booth overlooking the arena. The floor groaned. The gravity in the room shifted as the massive repulsor engines beneath the pyramid ignited. The entire structure lurched upward. Thorn, coughing in the smoke, tapped his headset. Retreat. They're lifting off, fall back to the extraction craft. The soldiers scrambled, dragging their wounded back toward the breach in the doors. Thorn paused at the exit, looking back at Ash through the clearing smoke. You've made a grave mistake, boy. Thorn shouted over the roar of the engines. The Trust does not forget. There is nowhere on Earth you can hide. Good thing I'm not staying on Earth, Ash yelled back. The pyramid ascended, the sudden acceleration forcing everyone to brace themselves. The view through the open blast doors shifted from the rocky ground to the sprawling canopy of the forest, and then, rapidly, to the clouds. As the enemy gunships peeled away, unable to match the pyramid's vertical thrust, Ash hit the button to seal the blast doors. The heavy steel slammed shut, sealing them in darkness until the emergency lights flickered back to steady amber. Silence returned to the arena, but it was different now, it was electric. Ash slumped against a piece of rubble, sliding down until he hit the floor. Pikachu crawled into his lap, exhausted. Steps approached. Ash looked up. Anabel, Lucy, and Greta stood over him. They didn't look like they had just committed high treason, they looked relieved. Anabel knelt first, disregarding the dust on her pristine suit. She reached out, her hand hovering over Ash's knee. Are you injured? I'm fine, Ash said, though his adrenaline was crashing hard. Just, what was that? What did you mean, we're yours? Lucy crossed her arms, leaning her hip against a slab of broken stone. She looked Ash up and down, her expression unreadable. Tradition, master. The frontier isn't a democracy. The brains serve the master. When you beat Brandon, you bought the contract. The contract? Ash asked. Blood and soul, Greta said, grinning as she wiped a smudge of oil from her cheek. She sat down cross-legged on the floor next to Ash, far too close for casual conversation. We're your lieutenants. Your bodyguards. She winked. And whatever else you need us to be to keep the lineage strong. That's the deal. Ash looked at them. He saw the seriousness in Anabel's eyes, the challenge in Lucis, the eagerness in Greta's. They weren't joking. They had just thrown their lives away to protect him from the global government. He stood up, his legs shaky but holding. He looked at the brave symbol in his hand, then at the three women who were waiting for his order. He didn't blush. He didn't stutter. The Ash who would have panicked at the implication of whatever else was gone. left back in the dust of the arena. "We are at war," Ash said quietly. "Thorn said the trust is everywhere. If we land, they'll be waiting." "Then we don't land," Lucy said simply. "Anabel," Ash said. "Yes, Ash? Can you scan the pyramid? Make sure there are no trackers? No bugs?" "I can," she nodded. "Lucy, secure the perimeter. I want patrols in the corridors. If anything moves that isn't us, I want to know." "Consider it done," Lucy said, a flicker of respect crossing her face. "Greta," Ash turned to the martial artist. "Take stock of our supplies. Food, medical, energy. We need to know how long we can stay airborne." "On it, boss," Greta saluted, a sharp, snappy motion. Ash looked at the sealed blast doors. "We'll figure out the rest later. The contract, the lineage. We'll talk about it when we're not being hunted. Right now, I need generals. Can you do that?" Anabel stood up, her posture perfect. She looked at Lucy and Greta. They exchanged a silent glance, a communication of sisters in arms. "We are yours, Ash," Anabel repeated, and this time, she spoke aloud. "To the end of the world." Ash nodded. "Good, because I think that's exactly where we're going." The battle pyramid soared higher, piercing the cloud layer, a geometric shadow against the setting sun, moving toward the unknown. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. The Viper's Den. The battle pyramid was not a silent ship. It groaned. The immense superstructure, built of reinforced alloy and ancient stone, flexed as it cut through the high-altitude turbulence. Ash stood on the observation deck of the control spire, looking out at the endless sea of clouds below. It had been 6 hours since they fled the battle frontier site. 6 hours of silence from the outside world. No League broadcasts. No demands for surrender. Just a terrifying, static quiet. "You're standing too stiff," a voice said. "You'll pull a muscle before the fight even starts." Ash didn't turn. He recognized the tone, dry, slightly mocking, but with an underlying edge of steel. "I'm thinking, Lucy." The queen of the battle pike walked up beside him. She wasn't wearing her battle gear anymore. She had changed into a dark crimson robe that flowed like liquid silk, tied loosely at the waist. It was casual, yet deliberately exposing the long, jagged scar on her left calf. A souvenir from a Seviper bite years ago. "Thinking is Anabel's job," Lucy said, leaning her elbows on the railing. She looked at him sideways, her dark eyes analyzing his profile. "Your job is to be the scary monster that keeps the League awake at night. You didn't look very scary back there, huddled on the floor with your Pikachu." Ash turned to face her. "I was catching my breath. There's a difference between weakness and exhaustion." "Is there?" Lucy challenged. She pushed off the railing, stepping into his personal space. She was taller than him, just barely, but she used it. "Scott says you're the master. The sovereign. But I look at you, and I see a boy who's good at Pokemon battles. That's not the same thing as being a king, Ash." "I never asked to be a king," Ash replied, his voice even. He didn't back down. "That's the problem," Lucy snapped. "Greta is a puppy. She'll follow anyone who can punch hard. Anabel is compromised. She's been in love with you since the tower. She can't see straight." Lucy circled him, like a shark in shallow water. "But I don't love you, Ash. I don't even know you. And now I'm a fugitive because of you. My pike is abandoned. My life is gone. So I need to know." She stopped in front of him, her face inches from his. "Do you have the stomach for this? If Thorn sends 1,000 men to kill us, will you hesitate? Will you try to befriend them? Because if you do, I will kill you myself to save us the embarrassment?" Ash looked at her. He saw the fear behind the aggression. She had lost everything today. She was terrified that she had bet her life on a pacifist. "I won't hesitate," Ash said. "Prove it," Lucy hissed. The lights in the corridor flickered. Red emergency klaxons began to rotate silently, bathing the hallway in a bloody pulse. "Intruder alert." Scott's voice crackled over the intercom, tight with panic. "Sector 4. The hangar bay." Sensors didn't pick them up until they were already inside. "They have stealth cloaks." Lucy's expression shifted instantly from interrogation to lethal focus. "How did they get on board at this altitude?" "High altitude drop," Ash said, "already moving. They must have tracked our heat signature." He broke into a run, Lucy right on his heels. "Do you have your belt?" Lucy shouted over the alarm. Ash patted his waist. 6 Pokeballs. Always, you? I don't need them for this, she growled, pulling a small, curved dagger from the folds of her robe. It was a ceremonial blade, but sharp enough to slice bone. They reached the heavy blast doors of Sector 4. The electronic lock had been melted. The doors were pried open just enough for a person to slip through. Ash held up a hand. Lucy froze. How many? She whispered. Ash closed his eyes. He wasn't psychic like Anabel, but his time with Lucario had taught him to sense aura, the life force of living things. He focused, pushing past the hum of the engines. 5. No, 6. Cold. Disciplined. Their auras are muted. Null tech. 6 inside, Ash whispered. Planting explosives on the landing struts. They want to cripple us so we crash. We go in hard? Lucy asked, gripping her dagger. No, Ash said. They have null dampeners. Energy attacks won't work well inside the bay. We need to be physical. He reached for a Pokeball. Sceptile. The forest Pokemon materialized in a flash of white light, crouching low instantly, sensing the danger. Leaf Blade, Ash commanded softly. But keep it dim, no bright lights. Sceptile nodded. The leaves on its arms extended, glowing with a dull, menacing green. On my mark, Ash said. He kicked the gap in the doors, widening it, and surged through. The hangar bay was a cavernous space, filled with crates and the small scout ship Scott used. 6 figures in black tactical gear were scattered around the room. They were placing charges on the hydraulic lines. They turned as Ash entered, raising their silenced rifles. Now, Sceptile was a green blur. It didn't run. It vanished, reappearing behind the nearest soldier. A swift strike to the back of the knees, and the man crumpled. Contact. One of the soldiers yelled. Bullets sparked against the metal floor as Ash dove behind a crate. He wasn't a spectator. He grabbed a heavy wrench from a toolbox on the crate and hurled it. It wasn't a precision throw, but it struck a soldier in the helmet, staggering him long enough for Lucy to close the distance. She moved like water. She didn't stab. She used the hilt of her dagger to strike the nerve cluster in the soldier's neck. He dropped like a stone. Seviper. Poison Tail. Lucy screamed, releasing her Pokemon mid-slide. The giant snake erupted from its ball, its tail glowing purple. It slammed into 2 soldiers who were trying to flank Ash. They flew backward, crashing into a stack of fuel drums. But the leader of the squad, a hulking man with a heavy repeater, locked eyes on Ash. He ignored Sceptile. He ignored Lucy. He raised his weapon. Target locked. Terminating the master. Ash was out of cover. He had nowhere to go. Pika. Pikachu leapt from Ash's shoulder, iron tail glowing metallic silver. He slammed the steel tail into the barrel of the gun just as the soldier fired. The shot went wide, punching a hole in the ceiling. Ash didn't retreat. He capitalized on the opening. He tackled the leader around the waist, driving him into the wall. The soldier was twice his size, but Ash had the momentum. They grappled, the soldier trying to draw a combat knife. Ash! Lucy screamed, turning to help. Stay back, Ash grunted, struggling for control of the soldier's arm. The soldier headbutted Ash. A burst of light exploded behind Ash's eyes. He tasted blood. The soldier raised the knife. Ash didn't panic. He saw the opening. He didn't use strength. He used gravity. He twisted his hips, hooking the soldier's leg and slamming him into the metal floor with a judo throw he'd learned from Chuck in Cyanwood. The soldier hit the deck hard, the knife skittering away. Ash was on him instantly, forearm pressed against the man's windpipe. Stay down. Ash growled. His eyes were burning with a fierce, primal intensity. The soldier gasped, reaching for a detonator on his belt. Ash saw it. He didn't think. He grabbed the soldier's wrist and twisted. There was a sickening snap. The soldier screamed, dropping the device. Sceptile was there a second later, the blade of its leaf sword resting millimeters from the soldier's throat. The room went silent. The other 5 intruders were unconscious. Sceptile and Seviper stood guard over the bodies. Ash slowly released the leader, standing up. He wiped the blood from his lip. His chest was heaving. Lucy walked over to him. She looked at the unconscious soldiers, then at the broken wrist of the leader, then at Ash. She saw the blood on his face. She saw the lack of hesitation. "Well," Lucy said, her voice surprisingly soft, "I guess you do have the stomach for it." Ash looked at her. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him shaking slightly. "We need to interrogate them. Find out how they found us." "I'll handle that," Lucy said darkly. "Pain is my specialty." "No torture," Ash said firmly. "Intimidation, yes, but we are not them." Lucy paused, then nodded slowly. "As you wish, Master." She reached out, her thumb brushing the cut on his lip. It was a startlingly intimate gesture. She looked at the blood on her thumb. "You fight like a wild Pokemon," she noted. "No style, just instinct." "It's kept me alive this long," Ash said. "It will get you killed if you're not careful," Lucy countered. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Next time, let the queens do the bleeding. That's what we're here for." "I don't hide behind my friends," Ash said. Lucy smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had seen from her. It wasn't cruel or seductive. It was approving. "Friends?" she echoed. "Is that what we are?" "I hope so," Ash said. The door to the hangar burst open. Greta and Anabel rushed in, followed by a frantic Scott. "Ash. Are you?" Anabel stopped, seeing the carnage. The unconscious soldiers. The blood on Ash's face. "We're secure," Ash said, his voice commanding. "Scott, check the hull for tracking beacons. These guys didn't just guess our coordinates." "On it," Scott squeaked, running to a console. Greta walked over, kicking one of the unconscious soldiers. "Damn. I missed the fun." She looked at Ash, grinning. "You look like you went 12 rounds with a Machamp." "Felt like it," Ash muttered. Anabel walked to him. She didn't speak. She placed a hand on his chest. A warm glow of pink psychic energy emanated from her palm. The pain in Ash's head faded. The cut on his lip knitted together. "Thank you," Ash said. Anabel looked into his eyes. Her telepathy brushed his mind. "You were afraid. Not for yourself, for Lucy." Ash looked at Lucy, who was instructing Seviper to bind the prisoners with its tail. "She needed to know she could trust me," Ash projected back. Anabel smiled sadly. "She knows now. We all do." "All right," Ash said aloud, addressing the room. "Lock these men in the brig. Double the guard patrols. Anabel, I need you to scan their minds before they wake up. Find out who sent them." "It was Thorn," Lucy said, picking up the detonator the leader had dropped. She turned it over. The logo of the Obsidian Trust was stamped on the back, and they weren't just trying to crash us. She tossed the device to Ash. "This isn't a bomb trigger," Lucy said. "It's a beacon activator. They weren't trying to destroy the ship. They were trying to tag it." Ash looked at the device. A cold chill went down his spine. "They want to follow us," Ash realized. "They want to know where we're going." "Why?" Greta asked. "Because," Ash said, crushing the device in his hand, "they don't just want the frontier. They want what the frontier protects." He looked at his 3 generals. "We need to disappear, completely." "How?" Scott asked from the console. "They have satellites everywhere." Ash looked at the map on the wall. He pointed to a swirling mass of clouds over the Northern Ocean. A place where storms raged perpetually, interfering with all electronic signals. "The Seviper Mountains were just a pit stop," Ash said. "We're going to the storm front, into the nebula." "That's suicide," Scott said. "The turbulence alone will tear the pyramid apart." "Not if we have a pilot who can see the wind," Ash said, looking at Anabel. Anabel straightened. "I can guide us. And a pilot who can ride the currents." Ash looked at Greta. "You're the best flyer I know." Greta beamed. "You want me to drive this rock?" "Hell yes." "And someone to keep the crew in line when things get rough." Ash looked at Lucy. Lucy gave a mock curtsy. "I'll make sure no one panics." Ash nodded. "Set a course." "We vanish tonight." As the team dispersed to their stations, Ash remained in the hangar for a moment. He looked at his hands. They were still trembling, not from fear, but from the realization of what he had become. He wasn't just a trainer anymore, he was a warlord in the making. And the scary part was, he was starting to get used to it. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. Resonance. The storm was not merely weather, it was a physical barrier of violence. Outside the battle pyramid, the atmosphere screamed. The nebula, as Scott had called it, was a chaotic vortex of magnetic storms and hurricane-force winds located over the northern sea. Lightning didn't flash. It crawled across the hull in sustained, blinding sheets. The massive flying fortress shuddered constantly, the floor plates vibrating with the stress of the hull. Ash sat on the edge of his bed in the master's quarters. The room was opulent, too opulent for him, with dark mahogany furniture and heavy drapes, but right now, it felt like a prison cell spinning on a centrifuge. He pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes, but the pressure didn't stop the pain. It wasn't a headache. It felt like a hook had been embedded in the center of his brain and was being pulled, slowly, by a winch. "It's getting worse," a voice noted from the doorway. Ash looked up, squinting through the throbbing migraine. Greta stood there, leaning against the doorframe. She held a tray with water and a bottle of pills, but her usual bouncy energy was dampened by concern. "I'm fine," Ash lied, his voice rasping. "You're pale as a ghost, and your aura is leaking," Greta said bluntly. She walked over and set the tray down. "I can feel it from the hallway. It feels cold. Like static." "It's the null tech," Ash muttered, taking the water. His hand shook slightly, from the fight in the hangar. "When I grabbed that soldier, something transferred. It's a contagion." Anabel entered the room. She didn't walk. She seemed to glide, her presence instantly calming the chaotic energy in the air. She was dressed in a loose, flowing robe of pale lavender, her hair down, free of its usual strict styling. "Greta, I need to take him," Anabel said softly. "To the med bay?" Greta asked. "No medicine deals with the body. This is a wound of the spirit." Annabel's eyes, usually a soft violet, were dark and serious. The null energy is designed to sever connections. It attacks the bond between trainer and Pokemon. Ash has so much latent aura that the energy is trying to sever his soul from his body. Greta looked at Ash, alarm spiking in her expression. "Can you fix him?" "I can," Anabel nodded. She extended a hand toward Ash, "but he has to trust me completely. No walls. No secrets." Ash looked at the hand. He looked at Anabel. He remembered the feeling during the battle, the voice in his head, the absolute synchronization. He took her hand. Her skin was cool, grounding. "Lead the way," Ash said. The salon tower was the highest point of the pyramid, a spire of glass and steel designed for psychic amplification. The meditation chamber at the top was a stark contrast to the industrial grid of the rest of the ship. The floor was covered in soft tatami mats, and the air smelled faintly of burning sage and ozone. Rain lashed against the reinforced glass dome above them, but inside, the silence was absolute. "Sit," Anabel instructed, guiding him to the center of the room. Ash sat cross-legged. Anabel sat opposite him, close enough that their knees touched. "Close your eyes," she whispered. "Focus on the pain. Don't fight it. Visualize it." Ash obeyed. In the darkness of his mind, the pain was a jagged, black shard of glass, vibrating with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. "I see it," Ash gritted out. "Good. Now, I am going to enter. Do not push me out." Ash felt a pressure against his forehead. Not physical, but mental. It felt like a warm liquid pouring over the top of his skull, seeping through the bone, touching the raw, exposed nerves of his consciousness. It was invasive. It was terrifying. His instinct was to recoil, to put up the mental shields he used during battles. "Let go, Ash." Her voice was inside him now. It wasn't sound, it was thought. Ash exhaled, and the walls crumbled. The sensation was blinding. Suddenly, he wasn't just Ash. He was Anabel. He felt the texture of the tatami mats under her legs. He felt the worry fluttering in her chest like a trapped bird. He felt the immense, crushing weight of her psychic power, a constant roar of other people's thoughts that she had to filter out every second of every day. And beneath the noise, he felt him. He felt her image of him. It wasn't the image of a hero or a master. It was a warm, glowing sun in the center of her cold, psychic universe. He felt a love so profound, so long guarded, that it stole the breath from his real lungs. It wasn't a crush. It was an anchor. She had loved him since the moment they met years ago, loved his kindness, his density, his fire. And she had buried it under duty, terrified that speaking it would break the friendship. "Anabel." Ash projected, his mental voice trembling with the realization. Don't look at that, her thought voice rippled with sudden embarrassment, trying to hide the feelings. Focus on the wound. No, Ash countered gently. He didn't pull away. Instead, he projected his own feelings back. Not romantic love, not yet, but a fierce, protective loyalty. A deep admiration for her strength. An absolute trust. I see you. I accept you. All of it. The psychic space between them turned gold. The embarrassment faded, replaced by a sense of peace so deep it felt like drowning in warm water. Anabel's mental presence wrapped around the jagged black shard of null energy in his mind. She didn't smash it, she eroded it. Her empathy washed over the negativity, dissolving the artificial severance with pure connection. The pain vanished. Ash opened his eyes. The room was dim. The storm outside was still raging, but the headache was gone. Anabel was staring at him, her face flushed, her breathing shallow. Tears were streaming silently down her cheeks. You saw everything, she whispered, her voice trembling. She looked away, ashamed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to burden you with my feelings. Ash reached out, cupping her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. It's not a burden, Ash said firmly, it's a gift. Anabel searched his eyes, looking for pity. She found none. She found only the steady, burning gaze of the master. Ash. We don't have to figure it all out tonight, Ash said softly, wiping a tear from her cheek with his thumb. But don't ever hide from me again. We're in this together. Mind and body. Anabel leaned into his touch, closing her eyes, a shudder running through her frame. Yes, together. Suddenly, Ash stiffened. The link between them hadn't fully closed. It was a low hum in the back of his head. And through that open door, he heard something. Sector 7. Coordinates locked. Transmission burst in 3, 2. It wasn't Anabel's thought. It was a foreign signal, cold, calculating. Did you hear that? Ash hissed. Anabel's eyes snapped open. The flush vanished, replaced by the steely gaze of the salon maiden. A telepathic broadcast. Shielded. Someone is using a psychic dampener to hide their thoughts, but because we are linked, we acted as an amplifier. Someone is sending our location. Ash stood up, his face hardening. Who is it? Anabel closed her eyes, tilting her head. It's faint. Coming from the lower engineering deck, near the comms relay. She frowned. I recognize the mental signature. It's Chief Engineer Vance. Vance? Ash clenched his fist. Vance had been with the Frontier for 5 years. He was the one who kept the pyramid flying. He's afraid, Anabel narrated, reading the distant mind. They have his family. The trust. They threatened his daughter. Ash's anger flared, but he tamped it down. He's betraying us to save his kid. What do we do? Anabel asked. If we send security, he'll panic and send the burst transmission instantly. Ash looked at Anabel. The connection between them was still humming, vibrant and clear. He realized he didn't need a radio. He didn't need to shout. We don't send security, Ash said. We go, and we don't break the link. They moved through the corridors like ghosts. Ash took point, but he didn't speak. He didn't have to. Left at the junction, Anabel projected. Ash turned left instantly. 2 crewmen approaching. Civilian. Avoid. Ash stepped into a maintenance alcove, pulling Anabel with him. The crewmen passed, chatting about the storm, oblivious to the master and the maiden pressed together in the shadows just inches away. They reached the engineering deck. The hum of the massive repulsor engines was deafening here, vibrating in their teeth. The air was hot and smelled of oil. At the far end, hunched over a secondary communications console, was Vance. He was a balding man in a grease-stained jumpsuit. His hands were shaking as he typed a frequency code into the terminal. He's bypassing the firewall. Anabel's voice echoed in Ash's mind. He has a portable transmitter hooked into the main array. 1 keystroke and the trust gets a ping. Ash analyzed the room. 30 feet of open space. If he ran, Vance would hear him. Can you hold him? Ash asked mentally. Not physically, not from here, but I can make him hesitate. Do it. Anabel narrowed her eyes. Vance's hand hovered over the send key. Suddenly, he froze. A look of confusion crossed his face. He looked at his hand as if it didn't belong to him. I'm projecting doubt, Anabel projected, flooding his amygdala with the fear of getting caught. It's fighting his fear of the trust. It bought them seconds. Ash moved. He didn't run. He stalked, his footsteps synchronized with the thrum of the engines to mask the sound. He was 10 feet away. Vance shook his head, fighting the psychic intrusion. No, I have to, he muttered, his finger descending. Ash. Now. Ash surged forward. He didn't tackle the man. He vaulted over the railing and landed softly next to him. Vance gasped, spinning around. Ash grabbed Vance's wrist, the one hovering over the keyboard. He didn't break it. He just held it. His grip was iron. Don't, Ash said. Vance stared at him, eyes wide with terror. Master, please. They have your daughter, Ash said. It wasn't a question. Vance collapsed, sobbing. They sent me a video. They said if I didn't ping them within 24 hours. Please, Ash. I didn't have a choice. Ash looked at the console. The coordinates were typed in. The frequency was set to the Obsidian Trust's secure channel. Anabel stepped out of the shadows. She placed a hand on the console. I can wipe the memory banks, she said aloud. Make it look like a malfunction. Vance looked up, hope warring with despair. But my daughter. Ash released Vance's wrist. He looked at the trembling man. A leader would execute a traitor. A hero would forgive him. Ash decided to be the sovereign. Send it, Ash said. Anabel froze. Ash? Vance blinked. What? Change the coordinates, Ash commanded. Send them a ping, but not here. Ash pulled up the holographic map on the console. He pointed to a location 300 miles south, the jagged peaks of Mount Silver. The most dangerous, inhospitable terrain in the region, filled with wild Tyranitar and Ursaring. Send them to Mount Silver, Ash said cold. Let them hunt ghosts in the blizzard. Vance's hands shook, but he nodded. He typed in the new coordinates. It's done. They'll think we're hiding in the caves there. Good, Ash said. Now, they'll think you're loyal. Your daughter stays safe for now. Vance fell to his knees, grabbing Ash's hand. Thank you. I swear, I'll never. Vance, Ash cut him off. His voice wasn't angry, but it was heavy. You are relieved of duty. You will go to your quarters. You will stay there until I say otherwise. If you leave your room, Greta will find you. And she won't be as nice as me. Yes, Master. Yes. Vance scrambled up and ran toward the exit. When the door closed, silence returned to the engineering deck. Ash slumped against the console, the adrenaline fading. The headache threatened to return, a dull throb at the base of his skull. Anabel stepped close to him. She didn't ask permission this time. She placed her hands on his temples. You did well, she projected. Ash looked at her. We did well. He looked at the screen, where the fake signal was pulsing away, leading their enemies into a trap. Anabel, Ash said aloud. Can we keep the link? Just a little bit? The background noise. It's quieter when you're there. Anabel smiled. It was a radiant, beautiful thing that lit up the gloomy engineering deck. Always, she whispered. She stepped closer, resting her forehead against his chest. Ash wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on her head. Up on the bridge, the storm raged. In the hangar, Lucy was sharpening her knives. In the mess hall, Greta was pacing. But here, in the hum of the engine, the master and the maiden stood in silence, two minds drifting in the same current, no longer alone. Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. The dojo of iron. The battle pyramid hung in the sky like a dormant volcano, hidden within the churning gray clouds of the nebula. While the storm outside raged with electric fury, the air inside was recycled, stale, and thick with a different kind of tension. Waiting was the hardest part of war. Ash Ketchum stood in the center of the training dojo on Deck 3. It was a stark, industrial space, steel floors, reinforced bulkheads, and rows of heavy punching bags hanging from chains. He was alone, stripped to the waist, sweat slicking his skin under the harsh fluorescent lights. Thud. Thud. Thack. His fists slammed into the heavy bag, finding a rhythm. He wasn't using technique. He was burning off the restless energy that had been clawing at his chest since they fled the mountains. Every strike was a thought he couldn't vocalize. The trust. The lead. The way Anabel had looked at him in the meditation chamber. Thud. He threw a roundhouse kick, his shin connecting with the leather. The bag swung violently, the chain rattling like a caged ghost. "You're telegraphing." The voice cut through the noise of his breathing. Ash stopped, catching the swinging bag to steady it. He didn't turn around. He wiped the sweat from his eyes. "I'm not trying to hide my hits, Greta. I'm trying to break the bag." Greta leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. She was dressed in loose martial arts GI pants and a black tank top that showed off the corded muscle of her shoulders. Her golden eyes tracked a bead of sweat running down Ash's spine. "Breaking things is easy," Greta said, pushing off the wall and walking toward him. She moved with a predatory bounce, the balls of her feet barely touching the steel. "Any macho can break a rock. A king needs to know how to strike without being touched." She stopped 3 feet from him. The air between them crackled. It wasn't the psychic hum he shared with Anabel, nor the sharp, dangerous voltage of Lucy. It was heat, pure, physical radiance. "You're bored," Ash noted, turning to face her. "I'm climbing the walls, Ash," Greta admitted, grinning sharply. "We've been hiding in this cloud for 2 days. My Hariyama is using the mess hall tables as weights. I need to hit something." She tilted her head. "And you look like you need to get hit." Ash cracked his neck. He raised his hands, settling into a loose stance. "No Pokemon?" "Just us," Greta said. Her grin widened, revealing a flash of white teeth. "Unless you're scared of a girl without her electric rat." Ash didn't answer. He stepped in. He threw a jab, testing her range. Greta didn't even block. She slipped her head a fraction of an inch to the left, the wind of his fist ruffling her bangs. Before Ash could retract, she was inside his guard. Her palm struck his solar plexus. It wasn't a hard hit, just a check, but it knocked the wind out of him. Ash stumbled back, wheezing. "Too slow," Greta taunted, bouncing on her toes. "You fight like you're commanding a Charizard. You wait for the turn. There are no turns here, Master. Flow." Ash grit his teeth. He rushed her this time, abandoning the boxing stance for something wilder, a grappling tackle he'd learned watching Halucha. Greta laughed. She pivoted on one heel, using his momentum against him. She grabbed his wrist, twisted, and swept his legs. The world flipped. Ash hit the mat hard, the steel floor vibrating against his back. Before he could scramble up, Greta was on top of him. She straddled his waist, pinning his wrists to the floor above his head. Her face was inches from his, her breathing steady, her eyes dancing with adrenaline. "Yield," she whispered. Ash looked up at her. He could feel the power in her grip. She was stronger than him. Years of conditioning as the arena tycoon. But he wasn't helpless. "No," Ash grunted. He bucked his hips, bridging hard. It caught her off balance. He freed one hand, grabbing her shoulder, and rolled. They wrestled across the mat, a tangle of limbs and grunts. It was messy, unrefined, and visceral. They froze, locked in a stalemate. Ash had her in a headlock. She had him in a leg scissor hold that was slowly cutting off the blood to his carotid artery. Both of them were panting, sweat dripping from their foreheads, mingling on the mat. "Not bad," Greta wheezed, tightening her legs. "You've got guts." "I learn fast," Ash choked out, tapping her thigh. Greta released him instantly. They rolled apart, lying on their backs, staring up at the lights. The tension in the room had shifted. It wasn't just aggression anymore. The violence had stripped away the hierarchy. They were just 2 warriors catching their breath. Greta sat up, wiping her face with her forearm. She looked at Ash, her expression serious for the first time. "You know why I joined you, right?" she asked. Ash sat up, rubbing his neck. "Because of the contract?" "Screw the contract," Greta scoffed. "I don't care about politics. I joined because I saw you beat Brandon. I saw you command a Sceptile to fight a Regirock and win. That kind of fire. It's rare. I want to be close to that fire." She crawled over to him on her hands and knees. She reached out, tracing a bruise forming on his arm where she'd grabbed him. "But a fire that burns too bright burns out," Greta murmured. "I'm the vanguard, Ash. My job is to be the first one in the fight so you don't have to take every hit. Let me be your shield." Ash looked at her. He saw the fierce loyalty burning in her eyes. "I don't want you to be a shield, Greta. Shields get broken. I want you to be a sword." Greta's eyes widened. Then, a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. She leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. "I can be sharp," she whispered. The intercom screeched. "Master. Report to the bridge immediately." Scott's voice was high-pitched, bordering on hysteria. "We have a situation on the ground." The moment shattered. Greta pulled back, the playfulness vanishing instantly. She was the tycoon again. "Duty calls," she said, standing up and offering Ash a hand. Ash took it. She pulled him up with a single heave. "Rain check on the rest of the round," Ash said, grabbing his shirt. "Count on it," Greta replied, already running for the door. The main screen on the bridge showed a nightmare. It was shaky footage intercepted from a news helicopter. A coastal town, unrecognizable through the smoke, was being torn apart. Buildings were crumbling into the sea. People were fleeing in a chaotic stream of color and terror. But it was the thing in the center of the destruction that made the blood run cold in Ash's veins. It was a Tyranitar. But it was wrong. Its green armor was gone, replaced by jagged plates of black obsidian that seemed to absorb the light around them. Its eyes were burning with a hollow, white energy. It roared, and the sound wasn't a cry. It was a distorted screech of metal tearing. "What is that?" Lucy asked, stepping onto the bridge. She was fully armored now, her Seviper coiled around her waist like a belt. "Project Null," Anabel said from the comms station. Her hands were pressed against her temples. "I can feel it from here. It's empty. It has no mind. No soul. It's a biological machine fueled by pain." "Look at the police response," Ash pointed, stepping closer to the screen. On the video, a squad of local police officers released their Pokémon, Arcanine, Blastoise, Manectric. They unleashed a barrage of fire blasts and hydro pumps. The attacks hit the black Tyranitar and vanished. The obsidian armor pulsed, absorbing the energy. The monster grew larger, its roar louder. It opened its mouth, and a beam of pure, colorless energy erupted, vaporizing a city block. "It feeds on energy," Ash realized. "Special attacks just charge its batteries." "It's attacking Port Balnea," Scott said, typing furiously. "That's only 50 miles south of our position. Thorn knows we're in the area. He's baiting us." "It's a trap," Lucy warned. "He wants you to come down there so he can tag you or kill you." "I know," Ash said. He turned away from the screen, walking toward the exit. "Where are you going?" Scott yelled. "To the hangar," Ash said. "Greta, suit up. We're dropping." "Ash, wait." Lucy grabbed his arm. "If you go down there, you expose us. The entire Trust fleet could be waiting in the clouds." Ash looked at her. "Lucy, look at the screen. That thing isn't stopping. It's going to level the city." "It's not our city," Lucy argued, though her voice wavered. "We have a duty to the frontier." "The frontier protects," Ash said firmly. "That's the job. If we let those people die to save our own skins, then we're no better than the League." He looked at Greta. "You wanted a fight?" Greta was already grinning, fastening her gauntlets. "I'll get the gliders." Ash looked at Anabel. "Keep the pyramid in the cloud layer. Give us tactical support. If the Trust fleet shows up, run." "I will not leave you," Anabel said, her voice echoing in his head. "Then be my eyes," Ash replied. The drop was silent. Ash and Greta fell through the storm in halo jumpsuits, riding high-tech gliders that looked like Skarmory wings. The rain felt like bullets at terminal velocity. Below them, the burning city of Port Balnea rushed up to meet them. "Target at 12 o'clock. Greta shouted over the wind, her voice clear in Ash's earpiece. Big, ugly, and glowing. "Remember the plan?" Ash yelled. "No beams. No blasts. Physical force only." Music to my ears. They flared their wings, pulling out of the dive just above the rooftops. They landed hard in the town square, boots skidding on the wet cobblestones. The Null Tyranitar turned. It was massive, easily 20 feet tall. It looked down at the two humans, its white eyes devoid of recognition. Pikachu sparked on Ash's shoulder, ready to unleash thunder. "No, buddy," Ash warned. "Iron Tail only. Save the juice." The monster roared and charged. It moved terrifyingly fast for something that size. A massive, obsidian-clawed hand swiped at Ash. "Scatter." Ash dove left. Greta dove right. The claw demolished a stone fountain where they had been standing a second ago. "Metacham." Hariyama, front and center. Greta tossed 2 Pokeballs mid-roll. Her fighting types materialized with war cries. Hariyama, stop that charge, arm thrust. The sumo Pokemon slammed into the Tyranitar's knee. It was like hitting a tank, but the force was raw kinetic energy. The Tyranitar stumbled. Medicham, high jump kick. Aim for the head. Medicham launched itself into the air, driving a knee into the beast's helmet. The armor cracked, but didn't break. The Tyranitar swatted Medicham out of the air like a fly. Ash, it's too thick, Greta yelled, catching Medicham. We can't get through the plating. Ash analyzed the beast. The armor was grafted onto its skin, but there were seams, flexible joints where the plates met. We have to open it up, Ash yelled. Sceptile, I choose you. The forest Pokemon appeared, blades already extended. Sceptile, speed mode. Don't let it touch you. Slice the joints at the elbows and knees. Sceptile vanished into a blur of green motion, darting around the lumbering giant. Shing! Shing! Sparks flew as the leaf blades struck the gaps in the obsidian. The Tyranitar howled in annoyance, spinning around and slamming its tail into the ground. A shockwave of earth tore up the street. Ash was thrown backward, crashing into a storefront. Glass shattered around him. He groaned, shaking off the dizziness. The Tyranitar locked onto him. It opened its mouth. The white light of a null beam began to charge. Ash! Greta screamed. She was too far away. Ash looked down the throat of the monster. He saw the energy gathering. It feeds on fear, Anabel had said. It feeds on aura. Ash stood up. He didn't run. He walked out of the shattered storefront. He glared at the beast, channeling every ounce of his defiance, every bit of his will. Hey! Ash roared. The Tyranitar paused, confused by the sudden spike in pure, uncorrupted aura. You want energy? Ash yelled, breaking into a sprint directly at the monster. Choke on this. Pikachu, Iron Tail, maximum power. Ash planted his foot and launched Pikachu. Sceptile, Leaf Blade, cross-cut. Greta. Now, Greta saw the opening. Hariyama, heavy slam, topple it. It was a synchronized assault. Hariyama slammed into the beast's legs, knocking it off balance. As it fell forward, mouth still open, Sceptile and Pikachu struck. Sceptile's blades sliced the hinges of the jaw armor. Pikachu spun like a buzzsaw, his steel-hardened tail slamming into the exposed chin of the beast. The impact slammed the Tyranitar's mouth shut just as the beam fired. Boom! The energy exploded inside the monster's own head, contained by its armored jaw. The Tyranitar convulsed, smoke pouring from its vents, and collapsed with a thunderous crash that shook the entire city. Silence fell over the square. The rain washed away the dust. Ash stood panting, his knuckles white. Pikachu landed on his shoulder, wiping soot from his nose. The Tyranitar didn't move. The white light in its eyes faded. The obsidian armor cracked and fell away, revealing a normal, unconscious Tyranitar underneath. We did it, Greta breathed, recalling her Pokemon. She walked over to Ash, her eyes wide. You crazy bastard. You used its own gun against it. It was a gamble, Ash admitted, leaning against a wall. His legs felt like jelly. Suddenly, a spotlight hit them. Ash flinched, looking up. A news helicopter was hovering overhead, broadcasting live. We have to go, Ash said. Now. Incoming. Scott's voice crackled. Trust dropships entering the airspace. ETA 2 minutes. Gliders are trashed, Greta said, looking at the wreckage of their landing gear. Pyramid is too big to land here, Ash said. We need an extraction. Look up, Greta pointed. Through the clouds, a massive, serpentine shape descended. It wasn't the pyramid. It was a steelix, no, a literal steel snake. It was the battle pike, or rather, the escape pod section of it. The hatch opened, and Lucy stood there, hair whipping in the wind, a rope ladder thrown down. Get in, you idiots, she screamed over the roar of the thrusters. Ash and Greta grabbed the ladder. The pike's engines flared, hauling them up into the storm just as the black unmarked jets of the Obsidian Trust screamed over the rooftops, firing missiles at the space they had occupied seconds ago. 1 hour later. The Battle Pyramid mess hall. The adrenaline had crashed, leaving a dull ache in Ash's bones. He sat at a metal table, nursing a cup of hot cocoa. The mood in the ship was electric. They hadn't just survived, they had struck back. The news footage of Ash Ketchum defending Port Balnea was already circulating globally. The narrative of the terrorist frontier was cracking. Greta slid into the seat next to him. She had showered and changed into fresh clothes, a simple tank top and sweatpants. She smelled of soap and antiseptic. She placed a massive plate of food in front of him: steak, rice, vegetables. "Eat," she commanded. "You burned a lot of calories being a hero." Ash smiled weakly, picking up a fork. "Thanks, Greta. For back there, you saved my skin." "We saved each other," Greta said. She watched him eat for a moment, her chin resting on her hand. "You know," she said softly, "when we were sparring, you held back." Ash paused, chewing. "Maybe a little." "Don't," Greta said. She reached out, her hand covering his on the table. Her skin was calloused, rough, and warm. "I told you. I'm not glass. I'm iron. You can hit me as hard as you can, and I won't break." She stood up, moving around the table. She pulled Ash's chair back, turning him to face her. The mess hall was empty, save for a few crew members at the far end who politely looked away. Greta straddled his lap, just like she had in the dojo. But this time, there was no violence. She wrapped her arms around his neck, looking down at him with a fierce, possessive intensity. "You are the master," she whispered. "But in the field, you are my partner, and I take care of my partners." She kissed him. It wasn't tentative. It was hungry, tasting of adrenaline and cocoa. It was a claim. A seal on the bond forged in the fires of Port Balnea. Ash hesitated for a split second, then his hands found her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, a release of all the fear and anger of the day. When they broke apart, Greta rested her forehead against his. She was grinning. "Now," she whispered, "eat your steak. We have a war to win." Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. The shadowed league. The air on the control spire deck was heavy with the smell of brewing coffee and political anxiety. Ash, Lucy, Anabel, and Greta were huddled around a central hollow map showing the Indigo Plateau, which was currently acting as neutral territory for a proposed summit. "It's too clean," Lucy stated, stabbing the map with a sharp fingernail. "Lance suddenly calling for a diplomatic resolution? After Thorn tried to bomb us and sent a null monster to frame us? It smells like sulfur and betrayal." "Thorn is a commissioner, Lucy, not a general," Ash countered, tracing the planned route through the sky. He was wearing a dark, military-style tunic, a compromise between his usual vest and formal wear. "He plays politics. By attacking Port Balnea, we gave him a narrative. By refusing to meet, we confirm it." "Exactly," Anabel murmured. She sat quietly, eyes half closed, monitoring the psychic static around the plateau coordinates. "Lance is genuine. I can sense the sincerity in his request for peace. But Thorn has built his trap on Lance's honesty. The commissioner is not present on the initial manifest, but his presence is a certainty." Greta paced the small deck space, her restlessness barely contained. "If we go, we prove we aren't scared. We get to show the world that the frontier is a legitimate power, not a bunker full of criminals." Ash looked at the three women. He was no longer just Ash, he was the political entity they had created. He had to think like a king. "We go," Ash decided, his voice low and firm. "We arrive with dignity and leave with the truth. We will not be cornered." "Then we go armed," Lucy declared, stepping forward. "Anabel, you're the comms link. Greta, you're the ground assault. I am the contingency. I'll prepare the retrieval craft." "Charizard," Ash added, nodding to a pokeball on his belt. "He stays out of the ball. On alert in the plateau's mountain hangar. Our insurance." The Indigo Plateau Conference Hall was a cathedral of marble and glass, usually reserved for Champion League ceremonies. Today, it was oppressively silent, packed with diplomats, league advisors, and heavily armed security officers in the white and gold uniforms of the official league guard. Ash walked down the central aisle, his boots echoing on the polished floor. He was flanked by his triad. Lucy, sharp and severe in a black suit, walked slightly ahead, scanning the faces in the crowd like a laser. Greta was on his right, radiating restless physical energy, her muscles coiled beneath her dress uniform. Anabel, walking on his left, projected a cool, calming psychic field that acted as a silent counter-dampener, keeping their communication lines open. Ash did not look like the boy who had once idolized these halls. He looked like their sovereign equal. Champion Lance met them at the massive round table. The Dragon Master looked troubled, his crimson cape hanging heavily on his shoulders. "Master Ketchum," Lance said, extending a hand. "Thank you for coming. The world needs this to end." "I am here to protect my people, Champion," Ash replied, shaking his hand with a firm, professional grip, "not to surrender." They took their seats. The proceedings began formally, handled by a neutral league moderator, but the air was thick with malice. 20 minutes into the meeting, the door at the far end of the hall opened. High Commissioner Silas Thorne entered. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored silver suit, flanked by 2 bodyguards carrying odd, bulky devices. Thorne didn't sit with the diplomats, he stood at the dais, taking command of the room. "I apologize for the interruption, Champion Lance," Thorne said, his voice smooth and condescending. "But diplomacy must be rooted in reality. And reality, Master Ketchum, is that you are a terrorist." Thorne snapped his fingers. The main screen behind Lance flared to life, showing heavily edited footage of the Port Balnea incident. It focused solely on Ash's and Greta's powerful Pokémon, showing the moment Hariyama struck the Tyranitar and the resulting collateral damage, cutting out the monster's null beam attack entirely. "This is not a defensive action," Thorne sneered. "This is an unprovoked attack on a civilian population, utilizing what we now confirm is a highly dangerous, unregulated military force, the Battle Frontier." Ash kept his expression neutral, but his anger was a cold, simmering heat. Anabel's thought voice cut through the room noise. "He's a liar. Don't fight the footage. Fight the man." "Commissioner Thorne," Ash said, leaning forward. "You lie. That footage is manipulated. We were defending those people against your experimental null weapon." Thorne smiled, a victory in his eyes. "Ah, the null weapon defense. Fictitious technology to hide actual crimes." He gestured to his bodyguards, who raised the bulky devices. "Let's dispense with the lies." Static. Anabel's mind screamed in Ash's head, dampening field, emergency. A low, whining hum filled the hall. Every Pokeball on Ash's belt vibrated violently, then went silent. The devices Thorne's guards held were null dampeners, blanketing the area in anti-aura energy, designed to neutralize Pokemon and psychic powers. Anabel gasped, clutching her head. Her psychic shield flickered and died. Lucy and Greta instantly drew combat knives, their last viable weapons. "Now, the true surrender," Thorne announced. "You are stripped of your ability to command, Master Ketchum. The League has decided that the frontier is too powerful for anyone who hasn't been sanctioned by the Trust." Thorne walked to the window, smiling triumphantly at the gray, cloudy sky. "You should have stayed hidden in your little cloud, because now, you face the wrath of the heavens." The glass ceiling of the vast conference hall fractured. Not from a blast, but from the unbearable pressure of a massive, supernaturally cold presence descending. A vortex of crystallized shadow and despairing frost tore through the roof. A massive, beautiful bird descended, its feathers slick with dark energy, its eyes twin points of horrifying, corrupt white fire. "The Shadow God," Thorne whispered, relishing the terror. "Articuno. Modified with null energy. It will crush your spirit before it crushes your skull." Champion Lance stood up, horrified. "Thorne, what have you done? Release the legend." "Silence, Champion," Thorne cut him off. "Your time for talking is over." The Shadow Articuno fixed its malevolent gaze on the table. The temperature dropped to sub-zero instantly. Frost bloomed across the marble floor. "Attack formation," Ash roared, snapping back to military command. He didn't have his Pokémon, but he had his generals. "Greta, clear the front. Lucy, secure the exit. Get the dampeners." Greta needed no command twice. She was already in motion, barreling toward Thorne's bodyguards, her cry echoing through the hall. "Hariyama is resting, boys. But I am not." She moved with terrifying speed, dodging a strike from a League guard's baton, and drove a savage elbow into the temple of the nearest bodyguard. The man collapsed, the dampening device clattering away. Lucy was faster. She became a blur, weaving through the chaos. She didn't fight the League guards, she targeted the other dampener. She threw her combat knife. It wasn't aimed at the man, but at the device. The steel struck the casing, shorting out the equipment with a flash of sparks. The moment the second dampener went down, the power surged back. Ash's belt vibrated violently. Anabel sagged against the wall, her psychic headache receding, replaced by a clear, focused determination. Charizard. High in the sky. Now, Ash yelled, releasing the massive fire type. With a roar of pure, fiery rage, Charizard burst from its Pokeball. It didn't emerge in the hall. It emerged high above the Indigo Plateau, already flying toward the descending Shadow Articuno. A clash of fire and shadow erupted over the mountain peaks. Anabel, can you get us an extraction route? Ash shouted over the roaring wind that Articuno generated. I have the comms, Anabel replied, holding a hand to her temple. Lucy, northwest window. Greta, keep the league off Ash. Lucy, having secured the exit, turned and released her Seviper. The poison type erupted, spewing a massive cloud of toxic smog that coated the exit, blocking the league reinforcements. Greta stood back to back with Ash, her fists flying, effortlessly neutralizing the remaining guards who dared approach the master. Thorn, pale but arrogant, stared out the window at the celestial battle. You cannot defeat a shadow god, catch him. You are outmatched. Ash ignored him. He ran to the large, reinforced window. He pressed his communicator. Charizard. Don't engage it directly, hit and run. Keep it away from the building. Draw it into the lightning. The battle between the two titans was magnificent and terrifying. Charizard, alight with the purest life force, darted around the null beast, its flamethrowers leaving streaks of distortion on the Shadow Articuno's body. The Articuno responded with null ice shards, spears of concentrated despair that ripped through the air, barely missing Charizard's wings. Master! Lucy screamed, pointing to the northern peak. Extraction is coming. A small, heavily armored black dropship, Lucis Contingency Craft, emerged from the mountain fog, already taking fire from League security units stationed on the perimeter. Go! I'll cover the retreat, Greta shouted, unleashing her Medicham. The fighting type formed a perfect shield around Ash and Anabel. Ash grabbed Annabel's hand. He didn't run to the exit Lucy had secured. He ran toward the window. We take the drop, Ash said. Lucy, lay down covering fire. Anabel, give us a path. Lucis Seviper created a perimeter of poison. Anabel used her residual psychic energy to blast the locks on the heavy window, cracking the reinforced glass. Charizard, cover fire. Mega punch the plateau. Charizard broke off the fight with Articuno, delivering a massive, supercharged punch to the mountaintop near the hall. The resulting tremor distracted the league guards just long enough. Ash crashed through the window, pulling Anabel with him. They dropped onto the landing struts of Lucis' dropship. Lucy quickly followed, covering their entry with a burst of her sidearm. Greta, seeing them secure, jumped into the dropship's open bay just as the league guard burst back into the hall. The dropship roared to life, shooting into the sky. They fled the Indigo Plateau, escaping the fury of the Shadow Articuno. Charizard, exhausted but victorious, plunged back into its Pokeball after successfully driving the legendary back toward the upper atmosphere. Aboard the dropship, the atmosphere was grim. They were safe, but the damage was done. On the dropship's tiny monitor, Thorn stood on the dais of the ruined hall, speaking into a lead camera. The Battle Frontier is a rogue state, led by a violent, unhinged tyrant who rejected peace and attempted an assassination on the commissioner himself. Thorn's voice boomed, broadcast globally. They have deployed unchecked legendaries and must be eliminated. Lucy turned off the screen, her face white with fury. We're done. We're branded. The world just saw Ash Ketchum attack the League, Greta said, clutching a bruised rib. There is no going back. Ash stood in the cramped cabin, leaning against the bulkhead. His face was set in granite. He looked at the brave symbol still tucked into his belt. It was no longer a trophy. It was a brand. He played his hand, Ash said quietly. Now we play ours. Thorn wants a war. We'll give him one. He looked at Anabel, who was monitoring the sensors. Find me a way back to the pyramid. We mobilize. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. Fracture. The attack was not a surgical strike, it was a deluge. It began not with klaxons, but with a sound Ash knew intimately. The metallic tear of hull plating giving way under massive force. Thorn hadn't just tracked them, He had amassed a small, specialized fleet designed to operate within the electromagnetic hell of the Storm Nebula. Ash was on the command deck with Anabel when the first wave hit. The entire pyramid bucked violently, throwing Scott across the room. Warning lights flashed scarlet across the main holomap, showing dozens of breaches across the massive superstructure. They're using magnetic dampeners to suppress the storm interference, Anabel screamed, clutching her headset. They're tunneling through the weather. Ash was already moving. He grabbed the emergency command handset, his focus absolute. He wasn't the boy who panicked in a crisis, he was the eye of the hurricane. Scott. Get the containment protocols online. Brandon's old traps. Unleash them. Lucy. Report to the primary hangar bay. I need external defense. Lucy's voice was instantly calm through the comms. Acknowledged, Master. Preparing the Pike's flight unit. We take out their mothership first. Greta. Emergency barracks. Boarding parties are hitting the engine room. They want to disable our flight capabilities. Greta's voice was rough with excitement. Best news I've heard all week. Sending Hariyama to the loading docks. I'll meet the first wave personally. Ash slammed the handset down. He turned to Anabel, who was frantically rerouting power to the shield generators. Anabel, you stay here. You're the spine of this command structure. They'll try to jam our comms with null tech. You're the only one who can keep the triad connected. Anabel met his eyes, her gaze steady. Be safe, she projected. I will be the link. Good, Ash said, already running for the main corridor. Pikachu, let's go. We cover the main corridor. I led from the middle. Greta's war. The internal grind. Greta met the first boarding party in the cramped, oil-smelling access tunnels leading to the main engine room. She wasn't wearing armor, just her GI and gauntlets. She preferred to feel the fight. Welcome aboard, boys, she spat, unleashing her Medicham and Hariyama. The arena is closed, but the show has just begun. The Trust soldiers, clad in thick obsidian-colored armor, raised their specialized rifles. Hariyama, focus on the bulkheads. Medicham, take the ceiling, Greta screamed. This wasn't an open brawl. This was trench warfare. Greta and her Pokémon were masters of close-quarters fighting. Hariyama didn't attack the soldiers. It slammed its massive palms into the walls and floor, creating shockwaves that disoriented the soldiers and bent the metal doors, funneling the enemy into choke points. Greta moved with deadly efficiency, using the tight space as a weapon. She dropped her weight, sweeping the legs of a soldier, then used her momentum to spring up and drive her elbow through the helmet visor of another. Greta. Anabel needs you to pull back. They're sending reinforcements through the ventilation shafts. Ash's voice commanded through the comms, clear, focused, and backed by Anabel's calming presence. Ventilation shaft. Greta grinned, breaking the neck of a stunned soldier with a quick snap of her wrist. Perfect. Hariyama, close the main corridor. Medicham and I are going mouse hunting. Greta and Medicham scrambled up the wall and vanished into the darkness of the ventilation system, ready to meet the new wave with pure, terrifying aggression. Her focus was not on survival, but on securing Ash's ability to fly the ship. The engine room is safe, Master. They won't fly away with my ship. Lucy's war. The external kill. Lucy hated the cold, but she was thriving in the hangar bay. She stood at the primary launch catapult, overseeing the last remaining Frontier fighter jets, old, heavily armored crafts piloted by loyal Frontier staff. On her command panel, the holomap showed the enemy deployment. A tight formation of 3 motherships supported by dozens of attack craft, all attempting to lock tractor beams onto the pyramid. Target the lead mothership, Lucy ordered, her voice completely devoid of emotion. Her hands flew across the controls. We only get one shot at this. Seviper, prepare the smoke deployment. Her Seviper was attached to the launch mechanism, ready to deploy a massive cloud of neurotoxin into the storm when the jets launched. General, the forward shield is collapsing, a frantic technician shouted. They're focusing null tech on the generators. Let them, Lucy replied, watching the countdown. It's a feint. They want us distracted. Lucy. Ash's command. They are sending a stealth craft toward the aft section. It bypassed my scan. Anabel's psychic alarm was sharp. Lucy's eyes narrowed. The aft section. That housed the secondary power core and Ash's primary quarters. Pilot 3 and 4, peel off the main attack. Divert all fire to Sector 7 aft. You do not let that stealth craft touch the hull. But General, the mothership is vulnerable now, the technician argued. The mothership is a distraction, Lucy snapped, turning on the man with a viper's glare. If the Master's core is compromised, the frontier falls. Focus on the defense of the Sovereign. Launch the fighters. The 4 remaining frontier jets screamed off the catapult, tearing into the chaotic storm. Lucy watched, analyzing their trajectory. The main mothership ignored the attack, focusing all its fire on the pyramid's weakened shields. Thorn is betting on Ash's ego, Lucy realized. He expects Ash to prioritize the grand battle. He's wrong. Ash is prioritizing survival. Lucy activated the comms. Seviper, now. The frontier jets released the gas canisters. The Seviper neurotoxin mingled with the magnetic storm, creating a massive, debilitating purple cloud that enveloped the entire Trust fleet. The mothership's shields collapsed as its systems shorted out from the toxic magnetic interference. The remaining frontier jets seized the opportunity, blasting the vulnerable mothership. It exploded in a brilliant, silent firework display high in the nebula. But Lucy knew the victory was hollow. The stealth craft was still approaching the aft section, and she was too far away to stop it. Ash's War. The Breach and the Cost. Ash was holding the line in the main corridor outside the command deck, fighting side by side with Pikachu. They faced a continuous wave of Trust foot soldiers. Pikachu, quick attack, disrupt their formation. Aura Sphere, now, Ash commanded. He was using Lucario's moveset, drawing on the latent aura powers awakened during his journey. He wasn't just directing, he was fighting. He launched a shimmering blue sphere of concentrated life energy from his palm, blasting a hole in the League formation. Ash, stealth craft has breached the aft shield. Moving towards your position. They are carrying a heavy null emitter. Anabel's mental voice was strained, the stress of linking the fractured commands wearing her thin. Understood. Ash yelled. Pikachu, we fall back, protect Anabel. They retreated into the command deck. Ash kicked over a console table, creating a barrier just as the door exploded inward. 4 elite Trust soldiers entered, led by a heavy, mechanical drone. The drone didn't carry weapons. It carried a massive, focusing lens that pulsed with black, cold energy, the null emitter. Master Ketchum, the leader hissed. The Trust sends its regards. Surrender the frontier key, and the pain will be brief. Pikachu. Thunder. Silence the rodent, the leader yelled. The null emitter drone whirred to life, focusing the black energy into a concentrated beam. It wasn't aimed at Ash. It was aimed directly at Pikachu, who stood on the console, charging a massive blast of electricity. Ash screamed. He dove forward, trying to interpose his own body between the drone and his partner. He was too slow. The beam hit Pikachu dead center. It wasn't a violent explosion. It was the sound of a battery dying. Pikachu's electric yellow turned instantly to a dull, charcoal gray. The bright sparks on his cheeks vanished. The power drained out of him. Pikachu convulsed once, weakly, and slumped into Ash's arms. He was silent, lifeless. Mission accomplished, the soldier sneered. The master is neutered. A cold, heavy rage washed over Ash. It wasn't the heat of Charizard, nor the focus of Sceptile. It was something deeper, older, and far more terrifying. He looked down at Pikachu. He pressed his forehead against his partner's cold, darkened skin. You took my friend, Ash whispered. His voice was ragged, barely audible above the engine noise. He looked up at the Trust soldiers. His eyes weren't blue anymore. They were burning with a fierce, blinding white gold light, pure, raw aura, uncontrolled and amplified by despair. You took everything, Ash snarled. He didn't move. He didn't need to. The entire command deck buckled. Ash unleashed a massive, unconscious psychic surge, pure life energy focused through the conduit of his rage. The pressure wave of aura hit the 4 soldiers like a hyper beam. Their obsidian armor cracked instantly. They were thrown backward, slamming against the bulkhead with sickening crunches, utterly neutralized. The null emitter drone twisted and melted under the force of the unleashed life energy. Ash stood alone, Pikachu cradled in his arms. The aura faded slowly, leaving him weak and shaking. Silence fell across the battle pyramid. The sporadic bursts of plasma fire outside ceased. Thorn's forces, realizing their primary target was injured and having sustained massive losses, retreated into the safety of the storm. The emergency klaxons died down, leaving only the sound of groaning metal and dripping water. Anabel crawled out from behind a shattered console, her face white with shock and exhaustion. She crawled toward Ash. "Ash," she whispered, tears tracking the grime on her cheeks. "Pikachu." Ash shook his head slowly. "The null emitter. It didn't kill him. It cut him off. He's dark. No spark. No aura." Greta burst into the command deck, covered in oil and blood, her eyes wild. Lucy followed, cold and precise, her sidearm drawn. They stopped dead when they saw Ash, uninjured, but holding his partner, utterly broken. "The core is secured, Master," Greta reported, her voice hollow. "The internal defense holds." "The mothership is destroyed," Lucy added. "They are retreating." Ash looked up at his generals. They were battered but victorious. They had defended his sovereignty, but he had lost the heart of his power. "They won this exchange," Ash said, his voice flat. "The cost was too high." He stood up slowly, cradling the unconscious Pikachu. "We need to find a cure," Ash said, looking at the dark, silent mass of the Storm Nebula on the main screen. "If the Trust can sever the bond, there must be a way to forge it again. Something pure. Something ancient." He looked at Anabel. "Where is the oldest, purest source of aura energy we can find, Anabel? Something strong enough to purge the null energy?" Anabel, still trembling, looked at the map, then closed her eyes, searching the collective unconsciousness of the world for an answer. "The legends speak of one place," Anabel whispered, opening her eyes. "The origin point of aura. The sacred nexus where human and Pokémon began their bond. The only place strong enough to cleanse a shadow god." "Where?" Ash demanded. "The Tree of Beginning," she breathed. Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. Awakening the Ancients. The battle pyramid descended through the dense canopy of the jungle bordering the valley of the Tree of Beginning. The landing was rough, a grating screech of metal on damp earth. The massive craft was limping, held together by sheer willpower and Lucy's quick fixes. Ash stood at the makeshift ramp, Pikachu's unconscious body secured in a small, specialized containment unit strapped across his chest. The unit monitored the dark, silent electric sac, a terrifying reminder of the null emitter's success. "The air is clean here," Anabel whispered, her hand resting on Ash's shoulder. She wasn't carrying a Pokeball. Her power was internal. No static. No null interference. The life force of this place is too strong. "Thorn won't be far behind," Ash said, checking his Pokeballs. Charizard, Sceptile, and his other heavy hitters were ready. "Lucy, establish a perimeter 3 clicks out. Set traps. We need a 4-hour window, maximum." Lucy nodded sharply. She carried her Seviper's ball and a sleek, custom-made rifle that fired non-lethal energy nets. "Greta and I will be the shield. If anything with a League logo appears, we send them back in pieces." "Greta," Ash added, turning to the arena tycoon. She was already in her battle gear, her eyes alight with focus. "You are our anchor. If we get separated, you hold the landing zone. No one touches the pyramid." "You got it, Master," Greta replied, bumping his fist. "Go get our mascot back." Ash nodded, looking at the jungle entrance. "Anabel and I go in. Let's move." The valley was a riot of primeval growth. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of ancient soil. Every root was a trip hazard. Every tree felt like a sentinel. Ash walked with a purposeful stride, his eyes searching the shadows. Anabel walked beside him, her psychic field extended, not just searching for enemies, but mapping the energy currents of the forest. "The path is organic, Ash. There are no roads. We follow the flow of the aura." "Is it working? The purification?" Ash asked mentally, tapping the containment unit. "It's resisting the null energy, but it's not cleansing it. The wound is deep. We need to reach the source." They pushed through a thicket of vines and entered a clearing. The ground was covered in massive, gray boulders that looked like discarded monoliths. The air here vibrated with immense, dormant power. Ash stopped, his instincts screaming. "Anabel, behind me, now." He didn't need to speak, she was already ducking behind his body. The boulders moved. 3 of the monoliths detached themselves from the earth and rose, revealing themselves as the legendary golems. Regirock, Regice, and Registeel. They weren't aggressive, but their forms radiated ancient, unyielding guardianship. Their glowing braille eyes focused instantly on the containment unit strapped to Ash's chest. They sensed the darkness, Ash muttered. The null taint. The Regirock roared, a bass sound that shook the very air, and charge. They won't listen to words, Ash yelled. Sceptile, Charizard. Diversion. Don't hit them hard, keep them moving. Charizard roared into existence, blasting a stream of fire that forced Regirock to pause. Sceptile darted through the undergrowth, slicing vines and distracting the golems with blinding speed. Registeel, the most methodical of the three, raised its arm, preparing a devastating focus punch. Anabel. Registeel's attack pattern, can you read it? Ash commanded. Its mind is simple, metallic, focused on defense. It will target the slowest moving object. Targeting us. Ash pivoted, pulling Anabel with him. The focus punch hit the ground where they had stood a second before, splintering the earth into dust. This isn't working, Ash grunted, releasing Staraptor and Torterra for additional support. They're too durable. We can't defeat them without hurting them badly, and we can't risk collateral damage to the forest. Lucy and Greta are on their way, Anabel relayed, clutching her head. The noise is immense. They're fighting the environment as much as the Pokémon. We have to hold them, Ash shouted. The united front. A whistle cut through the jungle din. It was sharp, precise, and utterly unexpected. Regice, which was preparing a blizzard attack, suddenly found its feet encased in a sticky, tar-like substance. General Lucy, arriving on the flanks. Lucy's voice crackled through the comms. She emerged from the trees, flanked by her Seviper. Master, your strategy is flawed. We neutralize the terrain, not the targets. Seviper had coated the ground with a paralyzing, fast-setting glue concocted from its venom. Regirock, lumbering into the area, also got its feet stuck. Greta, left flank. Greta and her Hariyama burst out of the jungle. We're going for the submission. Greta didn't fight the golems. She fought the resistance. Hariyama grabbed Registeel's rigid arm, applying a massive, crushing pressure that forced the legendary onto one knee. Medicham. Psybeam to Regice's head, Greta yelled. Keep it dizzy. Ash watched, mesmerized. This was not a Pokémon battle, it was a military operation. Lucy used traps and environment manipulation. Greta used overwhelming physical pressure. Anabel, now, Ash yelled. With the golems physically restrained, Anabel stepped forward, forcing herself to focus past the psychic noise. Her eyes flared violet. She extended both hands toward the restrained golems. We are not here to fight, Anabel projected, her thought voice amplified by Ash's presence, hitting the elemental minds of the Regis with pure, unadulterated emotional force. We're here to save the bond. Look at him. Look at the burden he carries. She forced the Regis to look at the dark, silent form of Pikachu in the containment unit. Ash took a deep breath. He stepped forward, out from behind his protectors. He dropped his guard completely. He reached out with his own aura, not as a weapon, but as a plea. He showed the Regis everything. The war with Thorn, the pain of the severed connection, the fierce loyalty of his companions, and his refusal to leave Pikachu behind. The golem's resistance wavered. Regirock stopped struggling against the glue. Registeel lowered its head. They recognized the purity of the master's intent. They smelled the null taint, but they recognized the strength of the bond that sought to heal it. The Regis slowly lowered their limbs. With synchronized movements, they turned, blasting the rock wall behind them with concentrated energy attacks, revealing a hidden, ancient passageway into the mountain. They've opened the path, Anabel whispered, utterly drained. Ash turned to his generals. Guard the entrance. No one comes in. Greta and Lucy nodded, their fighting stance unwavering. Go, Master, Lucy commanded. We will hold the world back. The heart of life. The tunnel led deep inside the mountain. The walls glowed faintly with soft, emerald light. They emerged into a vast, breathtaking crystalline cavern. At the center, growing from the ceiling and the floor, was the Tree of Beginning, a fractal sculpture of raw, pulsing life energy. And sitting at the base of the tree, staring at them with large, luminous blue eyes, was the legendary Pokémon, Mew. Mew didn't speak. It floated up to Ash, circling him slowly, its large tail twitching. It hovered over the containment unit holding Pikachu. Ash gently unclipped the carrier and set it down on a crystalline pedestal. "Please," Ash whispered, kneeling. "He's my best friend. The null energy. It's going to kill the bond. I need you to clean him." Mew placed its tiny, pink paw on the containment unit. A blinding wave of pure, rainbow-colored light erupted from the tree and flowed through Mew, directly into Pikachu. The darkness coating Pikachu's skin recoiled, sizzling like ice hitting fire. The null energy was being purged. Mew pressed harder. Ash heard a sound he hadn't heard in days, a faint, familiar pop of static electricity. The darkness vanished. The containment unit was filled with golden, sparking energy. Pikachu's eyes snapped open. He looked at Ash, confusion giving way to pure, unadulterated joy. "Pika Pie! Pika Pika!" Pikachu chirped, leaping out of the unit and right onto Ash's shoulder, nuzzling his cheek with furious intensity. Ash laughed, relief washing over him in a physical wave, tears stinging his eyes. "You're back, buddy. You're back." Mew hovered in front of Ash. The glow of the tree intensified, not just cleansing Pikachu, but bathing Ash in the raw energy. "Wait," Anabel thought whispered, grasping Ash's hand, "it's showing us something." Mew plunged its gaze into Ash's mind, and Ash was instantly overwhelmed by a torrent of images, not of the past, but of Thorn's true intentions. He saw Thorn not just creating null Pokémon, but attempting to construct a massive, planetary null emitter. The goal wasn't just to control the frontier. It was to sever the bonds of all trainers globally. To create a gray, emotionless world where every Pokémon was a controlled drone, eliminating the unpredictable nature of love and connection. Thorn wants to kill the concept of types, Ash realized, the knowledge flooding his mind. He wants to kill the entire relationship between human and Pokémon to enforce absolute, cold order. Mew withdrew. The vision ended. Ash opened his eyes, the light of the tree reflecting in them. He was no longer just fighting for his sovereignty. He was fighting for the soul of the world. "We know what he wants now," Ash said, standing up. He looked at Anabel, his resolve solid. "It's not just a political war. It's an ideological one. He wants to destroy everything we stand for," Anabel whispered, her eyes wide with the magnitude of the threat. Ash clipped Pikachu's Pokeball back onto his belt, not because he needed the ball, but because he was finally ready to go back to war. "Then we will stop him," Ash declared. "We mobilize. We gather our strength. We are taking the fight to the Obsidian Trust." Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. The traitor within the mood aboard the battle pyramid was one of fierce, exhausted determination. Pikachu, fully restored and sparking with renewed vigor, ran circuits around the command deck while the crew worked frantically to repair the hull breaches sustained in the nebula. The victory over the Null Tyranitar and the purification at the tree had done more for morale than any tactical success could have. The frontier had a heart again. Ash stood over the central holomap, planning the counterattack. His plan was audacious. To hit the Obsidian Trust's rumored orbital command post before Thorn could finalize the planetary null emitter. "We move at dawn," Ash declared, tracing a complex, high-altitude route across the map. "Greta, you lead the heavy hitters. Charizard, Hariyama, as the vanguard. Lucy, your pikecraft as the stealth element. You plant the structural explosives. Anabel, you're the final target acquisition." "A beautiful plan," Lucy said, her tone approving, but her posture stiff. She was leaning against a console, reviewing streams of data. "Simple, overwhelming force. But it's premature." Ash looked at her. "Premature. We know what Thorn is planning. We wait, the world falls. We wait until we stop bleeding internally," Lucy countered, pushing off the console. Her voice was low and dangerous. "I've been cross-referencing the attack data from the Nebula Siege with the security logs from the Tree of Beginning Drop." She slapped a datapad onto the map. The screen showed a tiny, red anomaly pinpointing the exact moment Ash's personal transport coordinates to the Valley of the Tree were broadcast. "Vance was contained before the last flight," Lucy said, her eyes fixed on Ash. "Yet, 2 hours after we landed, a trust retrieval team was on our 6. The coordinates were leaked from an internal console while we were in flight." Greta stopped tightening a strap on her gauntlet. Anabel's psychic presence on the bridge instantly turned cold and watchful. "Who?" Ash demanded, his hands gripping the edge of the map console. Lucy didn't hesitate. Advisor Torin, Scott's former chief engineer. He had access to the flight system, and his personal terminal pinged the outbound transmission. Ash knew Torin. A middle-aged man, precise, loyal to Scott's old, detached style of management. Someone who valued stability over ambition. Find him, Ash commanded, his voice deadly calm. Contain him. No violence. Bring him to the engine room. Torin was not brought to the brig. He was brought to the heart of the ship he had betrayed. The engine room was a dizzying, industrial space filled with the rhythmic clang of massive pistons and the smell of hot metal. Ash stood in front of Torin, flanked by Lucy and Anabel. Torin's hands were bound, but his eyes were defiant. "This is madness, Master Ketchum," Torin pleaded, the noise of the engine drowning out his fear. "You are running this institution into the ground. We had peace under Scott. Now we are hunted pirates." "We were never peaceful, Torin," Ash said, stepping closer. "We were just ignored. Thorn's war began long ago. You just chose the wrong side." "I chose survival," Torin spat. "Thorn promised safety. He guaranteed the safety of the Frontier crew if I simply provided the flight plans. He promised to leave the pyramid intact once you were neutralized." Lucy drew her knife, the steel gleaming in the glare of the running lights. "He promised? Treason is paid in blood, Torin. You gave them the coordinates to kill us. That merits summary execution." "No," Ash said, raising a hand to stop Lucy. His moral line was absolute. He would not become the brutal dictator Thorn wanted him to be. "I need information, not a corpse," Ash stated. He looked at Anabel. "Anabel, what is his truth?" Anabel stepped forward. She placed a gentle, psychic pressure on Torin's temples, not to torture, but to read his surface thoughts. "He fears the chaos of your leadership, Ash," Anabel relayed, her voice soft but absolute. "He truly believes the League offers stability. He is motivated by fear and a naive belief in Thorn's promises." "But..." Anabel paused, her eyes widening. "He sent a final transmission just 20 minutes ago, an alert." Crunch. The entire engine room plunged into darkness. The massive pistons sputtered and died. The only sound was the high-pitched whine of the residual energy bleeding off the core. Emergency lighting flickered on, bathing the space in sickly amber. "He targeted the core cooling system." A frantic voice screamed over the comms. "Scott. A trust cleanup crew is hitting the secondary conduit. They know we're here. They're exploiting the shutdown." The timing was horrifyingly deliberate. Torin's betrayal was ongoing, designed to cripple them just as they were preparing to strike. He didn't just leak the plan, Ash realized, his voice low and dangerous. He gave them the window. Lucy raised her knife again, her eyes cold. "Execute him, Ash. He is a liability." Ash grabbed the knife hand, stopping the blade inches from Torin's throat. "No," Ash commanded, looking at Lucy. "If we start killing our own out of fear, we become the tyrants Thorn says we are. That is his victory, not ours." Lucy stared back, her expression a mix of fury and confusion. "He just put a knife to our spine. Discipline, Master. Discipline is survival." "My discipline is moral authority," Ash countered, his eyes burning with conviction. He released Lucy, turning the full force of his gaze onto Torin. "Thorn is a liar, Torin," Ash said, his voice resonating through the silent engine. "He doesn't want the frontier intact. He wants the technology. And he wants to kill the concept of Pokemon partnership. He will kill your family once he has what he wants." Ash pulled up the holomap on a nearby terminal. He looked at the betrayed engineer. "I will spare your life, Torin, because I believe in redemption. But you will earn it. I need Thorn's final attack vector. Tell me when and where he plans the final push." Torin, witnessing Ash's mercy and the reality of the sabotage, finally broke. The final push is in 48 hours, Torin stammered, his defiance gone, replaced by pure terror. He is preparing to move the orbital null emitter into position. The ground forces will initiate a massive feint attack at the original Battle Frontier location to draw you out. The orbital weapon will hit the League headquarters, to paralyze global resistance, then target the remaining Frontier ships. Ash absorbed the information instantly. Thorn was planning to use the orbital weapon to strike both sides, seizing control of the power vacuum. "Anabel, Lucy, Greta." Ash spoke into his comms. New orders, Lucy. You and Greta deal with the cleanup crew at the secondary conduit. Protect the engine. Anabel, you and I are going to the comms tower. We are going to use Torin to feed Thorn a distraction. 10 minutes later, the secondary conduit was secured, thanks to Lucy's ruthless efficiency and Greta's brute force. The engine room's massive pistons groaned back to life. In the comms tower, Ash stood over Torin, forcing him to send a final, coded message to Thorn's encrypted channel. Send this. Master Ketchum has deployed his entire fleet to the original Battle Frontier site in response to the feint. The pyramid is virtually empty and vulnerable. Torin, trembling, typed the deceptive message. It's sent, he whispered. They will move the main fleet to the old Frontier location now, thinking they can crush you there. Good, Ash said. He deactivated Torin's console and pulled the main power from the comms system. He looked at the former engineer. You saved your daughter today, Torin. But you are a security risk. You will be placed in solitary confinement for the duration of this war. Your family will be informed you are in protective custody. Ash turned to Anabel. Seal him off. No contact. No mercy on the discipline, but no death. Anabel nodded, already projecting a psychic dampener around Torin's cell to prevent him from communicating further. As they left the cell block, Lucy met them. Her face was still set in a mask of grim discipline. You spared him, Lucy stated flatly. That was dangerous, if he had sold the new plan. He wouldn't have, Ash countered. He's motivated by fear, not malice. We needed the intelligence more than we needed the corpse. Ash stopped, looking at Lucy. Your methods are efficient, Lucy, but they are Thorn's methods. I will command with a moral center. That is the only difference between a sovereign and a tyrant. Lucy stared at him for a long moment, a flicker of something close to awe replacing the anger. A sovereign who risks the crown for a moral lesson. Fine. But if you fall, Ash, I will remind the world that I argued for the swift blade. She turned and walked away, her form a rigid line of loyalty. Ash looked at Anabel. Did she accept it? She accepted the command, Anabel replied, resting her hand on his arm. She accepted you. The moral center is what makes you predictable to us, Ash, and unpredictability is what Thorn fears most. Ash looked at the holomap, where the majority of Thorn's fleet was now massing at the original, empty Frontier site. Let them gather, Ash said, a cold determination settling in his eyes. We will not be fighting a defensive war anymore. We are taking the fight to their orbital command. Chapter 8 and Chapter 9. The orbital inferno. The battle pyramid screamed through the upper atmosphere, shedding its storm camouflage. It was battered, stitched together, but moving with a purpose that defied its mass. Below them, Earth was a blue marble of false peace. Above them, hovering in synchronous orbit, was the League's central orbital station, Thorn's makeshift fortress and the launch platform for the null emitter. On the command deck, Ash stood before his assembled generals. The crew, exhausted but united, moved with the precision of a trained military unit. Thorn thinks we're fighting a feint at the battle frontier, Ash said, his voice amplified across the command deck. He looked at each of his queens in turn. We gave him his lie. Now, we hit his truth. Pikachu, back to full strength, was perched on his shoulder, crackling with anticipation. 48 hours ago, Thorn was willing to sacrifice a global reputation to kill the idea of partnership. Today, we return the favor. We are not fighting for revenge. We are fighting for the freedom to connect. Greta, Ash ordered. You lead the frontal assault. Charizard, Sceptile, Hariyama. Overwhelm their outer defenses. Get me a secure breach into the docking spire. You are the vanguard. You take the first hit. Greta slammed her fists together. Front door is mine, Master. We'll paint the hull red for you. Lucy, Ash continued, turning to the strategist. Once Greta has the perimeter secure, you go dark. Infiltrate the internal core systems. Find the null emitter control array and disable it. You are the ghost, precision is key. Lucy nodded, her eyes narrowed. I'll cut the throat of the station before they know I'm there. Anabel, Ash said, his voice softening slightly as he looked at the salon maiden. You are command. You stay here. You are the central nervous system. I need you to coordinate every unit, every Pokémon, and override any jamming Thorn throws at us. You are the shield. Anabel pressed a hand to her temple, her expression resolute. I will be the voice in the storm, Ash. I will keep them alive. Ash nodded, then turned to the main viewport, which displayed the daunting metallic complexity of the orbital station. We launch in 60 seconds. Good luck, generals. The Vanguard's Fury Greta was the first out, riding her Hariyama onto a specialized drop pod. She hit the orbital station's docking spire with the force of a meteor. The moment they breached the outer defense perimeter, the station erupted in plasma fire. Trust fighters, high-speed, sleek interceptors, swarmed the airspace. Charizard, Dragon Claw. Take out that gun turret. Sceptile, use Leaf Storm to create a smokescreen. Greta screamed into her helmet. It was absolute, beautiful chaos. Greta was in her element. She commanded her fighting types like an extension of her own rage, smashing through the primary shields. Hariyama absorbed plasma blasts while Medicham used Quick Guard to reflect incoming laser fire. We are through the first containment layer, Master, Greta yelled over the roar of battle. Sending Lucy in. The doors are melting. The ghosts silence Lucy moved in a world of silence and shadow. Her unit, 2 Frontier stealth experts and her Seviper, slithered through the compromised ductwork of the station's maintenance access. Her mission was not to fight, but to disable. Seviper, use glare on that security sensor, Lucy whispered. The massive snake fixed the sensor with its paralyzing stare, shorting out the optics without triggering an alarm. They reached the internal comms junction, a massive hub of fiber optic cables. Lucy pulled out a pack of specialized thermite charges. This disables all internal security systems and locks their null emitter array into a manual input only, Lucy explained to her team. We're cutting Thorn's sight and centralized control. As she worked, she could hear the chaos outside, Greta's shouts, the heavy thud of explosions. She worked faster, the heat of the charges warming her cold hands. She was a woman of ice, but she worked for the fire that was Ash. Lucy, the pressure is immense. Thorn is jamming us. Report. Anabel's frantic voice cut through her private comm. Charges set. Firing in 5. Tell the master the lights are about to go out. Lucy pressed the detonator. A series of controlled explosions rocked the internal structure. The emergency lights in the ductwork died, plunging her into complete darkness. The station was blind. The shield's burden on the battle pyramid's command deck, Anabel was fighting a purely mental war. The moment the orbital station realized the pyramid was the launch platform, the retaliation was brutal. Thorn deployed every available defense, massive energy batteries, fighter squadrons, and concentrated null jamming fields that turned the comms channel into white noise. Anabel sat in the command chair, eyes closed, her psychic power surging outwards. She was the only reason the pyramid hadn't been blasted out of orbit. She was acting as a psychic firewall, filtering Thorn's jamming while simultaneously processing Greta's battlefield reports and providing Lucy with structural data for her infiltration. Greta's pinned at Sector 4. Anabel screamed, her voice hoarse. Lucy, did your charges fire? I need confirmation. The lights are out, but the jamming has intensified, he knows. Suddenly, the command deck rocked violently. The outer shields of the pyramid, strained by continuous attack, failed with a flash of sparks. Direct hit. Scott shrieked from the navigation console. We're taking heavy hull damage, we can't stay here, Anabel. We must stay. Anabel cried, focusing her powers. She extended a massive, psychic shield around the pyramid, the effort making blood trickle from her nose. She was fighting a physical force with her mind alone. Then, a new, horrifying shadow bloomed on the pyramid's tactical screen. It was huge. It was cold. It radiated a feeling of absolute, conscious malice. Anabel, Thorn's voice cut through the comms, synthesized and arrogant. You may be able to filter static, little salon maiden, but you cannot stop a god. I know where the master is. And now, I send his reward. Shadow Lugia, massive, black, its eyes glowing with the deep red of corruption, emerged from the station's main hangar. It wasn't attacking the ships, it was heading straight for the stationary battle pyramid. Ash. The core. He's sending Lugia for the pyramid. Anabel's mind screamed in raw terror. The Master's decree. Ash was preparing for his own deployment when Anabel's psychic message slammed into him. He saw the mental image of the colossal shadow Lugia, aimed directly at the command deck, at Anabel. No, Ash whispered. He looked at the small, high-speed landing craft prepped for his final infiltration, a one-man assault vehicle. He knew what this meant. He couldn't command the battle and defend Anabel at the same time. He had to sacrifice the tactical advantage for the bond. Ash slammed his fist on the main console, overriding Anabel's commands. General Greta, priority shift. You are leaving the breach, all heavy hitters, Charizard, Dragonite. Intercept Shadow Lugia. Draw it away from the pyramid. That is a suicide mission, but you must protect the command center. Master. No, I need to secure the breach, Greta protested mentally. That is a direct order, General, Ash snapped, his voice sharp with absolute authority. Your duty is to the Sovereign's strategic reserve, now. Ash turned to a frantic Scott. Prep the landing craft, I'm taking the quick route. He ran toward the docking bay, ignoring the protests of the crew. He knew the risk. If he left the command structure, the entire invasion might collapse. But he couldn't leave Anabel exposed. He entered the cockpit of the small landing craft. He armed the magnetic grapples. Ash looked out the viewport at the swirling chaos of the orbital battle. He knew Greta was rushing Charizard and Dragonite to intercept the Shadow God. A battle they couldn't possibly win, only survive. He looked up at the orbital station's command spire, Thorn's flagship. Pikachu, we're ending this now, Ash said, starting the engines. We don't have time for a siege. He launched the small craft directly at the enemy flagship, relying on the cloak of the ongoing battle. He piloted the craft like a madman, weaving through plasma fire and explosions. The craft slammed into the reinforced hull of Thorn's command spire. The grapples locked with a grinding screech of metal. Ash blew the hatch, the air rushing out into the vacuum of space. He pulled his helmet visor down, sealing the suit. He stood on the hull of the enemy flagship, Pikachu on his shoulder, the vast, silent horror of space surrounding him. He was alone, with the entire weight of the world on his shoulders. He raised his fists, ready to cut his way through the rest of the station to find Thorn. Chapter 9 and Chapter 10. The Master's Decree. Ash Ketchum didn't walk onto the command bridge of High Commissioner Thorn's flagship, he exploded onto it. The magnetic grapples of his landing craft ripped the observation window from its housing. Ash sailed through the breach, landing with a roll on the polished floor. The vacuum suit hissed, sealing against the sudden pressure change. Pikachu, sensors. Ash commanded. Pika-Pi. Pikachu jumped from his shoulder, charging electricity, illuminating the darkened bridge. Silas Thorn was waiting. He stood at the central console, impeccably dressed, but the silver suit was now augmented by thick, obsidian power armor. It was bulky, metallic, and hummed with a dangerous, familiar null energy. How disappointingly predictable, Master Ketchum, Thorn sneered, his voice synthesized and amplified through the helmet. The heroic solo charge. Did you genuinely think a single Pokémon could defeat me? I control the means of global stability. You control nothing, Ash said, advancing slowly, Pikachu running beside him. You trap, you corrupt, you control through fear. That's not stability, Thorn. That's tyranny. A semantic quibble, Thorn scoffed. He raised his massive, gauntlet-clad fist. The null emitter at the heart of the orbital station shuddered, redirecting its primary power. This suit, Ketchum, is powered by the pain of the Shadow Lugia. A force your pathetic bonds cannot comprehend. I am absolute power. Thorn charged. He moved with terrifying speed, launching a massive, null-charged punch. Ash dodged, pushing Pikachu back. Sceptile. Quick attack. Sceptile burst from its ball, darting around the huge suit, trying to find a weakness. But the obsidian armor was impervious. Sceptile's leaf blade struck the armor, only for the energy to be absorbed, making the suit glow faintly. Foolish. Thorn roared, delivering a massive counter-strike that sent Sceptile flying into the far wall, knocking it unconscious. Ash grimaced, recalling Sceptile. He was outmatched. Thorn was protected by the concentrated power of a captured legendary, magnified by null tech. You lose, Master, Thorn gloated, advancing slowly. Your friends are scattered, battling a foe they cannot beat. Your bond is useless against true power. Now, surrender the frontier key, and your death will be efficient. The bridge door burst open on the opposite side. Ash is never alone, Thorn, Greta yelled, launching herself through the gap. She was followed by Lucy, who moved with lethal calm. They had abandoned their military objectives to follow their master. Lucy, disable the outer conduits, Greta commanded, immediately releasing Hariyama and Medicham. I'll draw the heat. Greta didn't use special moves. She charged Thorn's suit, engaging in a physical brawl that was insane, even for her. Hariyama delivered powerful slaps. Medicham launched rapid kicks. It was a chaotic, beautiful distraction. Thorn roared in fury, momentarily distracted by the renewed physical resistance. Insects! I will crush you all. Lucy, meanwhile, was already at the main power conduits running along the bridge's wall. She placed 2 small, specialized charges. Lucy's sabotage was not about the whole station, it was about creating an opening. Anabel, now! Lucy screamed into her calm. The jamming is weak at the core, find Ash. Miles away, aboard the battle pyramid, Anabel was cradling the psychic exhaustion caused by coordinating the desperate fight against Shadow Lugia. But at Lucy's command, she seized the momentary lapse in Thorn's jamming. She didn't reach for Ash's mind. She reached for the agonizing, trapped consciousness of the Shadow Lugia powering Thorn's armor. She screamed telepathically, focusing the pain, the urgency, and the combined will of the entire Frontier Alliance. On the bridge, Ash felt the psychic spike. It wasn't his thought, it was Anabel's mind, filtered through his own connection, focused on the creature within the mech. Ash closed his eyes, ignoring the fight raging around him. He ran straight at Thorn. Pikachu! Focus every ounce of energy into my hands, Ash yelled. Pikachu leapt onto his shoulders, driving his electric charge directly into Ash's spine. Ash's aura flared, blindingly white gold, amplified by Pikachu's pure power. Ash grabbed the massive, obsidian gauntlet of Thorn's suit. You want control? Ash yelled, his voice raw. I give you connection. Ash plunged his amplified aura into the mechanical suit, past the armor, past the null tech dampeners, driving straight into the mind of the Shadow Lugia trapped inside. He didn't seek to fight. He sought to show it. Ash projected every memory he had. The loyalty of Pikachu, the friendship with Charizard, the pure love of the 3 women fighting around him. He projected the vision of the world Thorn planned, cold, gray, and silent. He projected the truth of the bonds Thorn sought to destroy. The Shadow Lugia consciousness, battered and corrupted, saw it. It saw the choice between cold slavery and fierce freedom. The obsidian armor screamed. The suit convulsed violently. The red, corrupted eyes of Shadow Lugia within the containment field snapped back to their natural blue. The Shadow God was free. The suit tore itself apart. With a titanic, psychic shriek, the Lugia ripped the power conduit connecting it to Thorn, unleashing a massive, pure, psychic shockwave that obliterated the command bridge. Thorn screamed, his suit dissolving around him as the null energy failed. He was vaporized in the burst of psychic freedom. The battle was over. Ash woke up slowly. He wasn't in the vacuum of space, nor in the rubble. He was lying on a soft blanket, and the air was filled with the metallic tang of ozone and plasma damage. He was back on the battle pyramid's command deck. Pikachu was curled up on his chest, sparking softly. He looked up. The 3 women were gathered over him. Greta, covered in soot, but giving a wide, exhausted grin. Lucy, her face grim, but a tear tracking the dirt on her cheek. Anabel, her hands resting on his temples, her eyes closed, healing the psychic toll. The station? Ash croaked. Destroyed, Lucy said, her voice shaking slightly. The Shadow Lugia. It was freed. It leveled Thorn's command spire, then cleansed the remaining null emitter before vanishing. The war is over, Ash, Greta whispered, leaning down. We won. Anabel opened her eyes. The pain in her gaze was gone, replaced by an absolute, terrifying clarity. We almost lost you. We all saw the moment you surrendered your life to save Lugia's soul. It was the command of a true master. I told you, Ash whispered, reaching up to take Anabel's hand. I don't lead with tyranny. Lucy knelt beside him, resting her head on his shoulder for a brief moment, her cool, composed demeanor completely shattered. You are reckless, Ash. But you are ours. And we are yours. You have earned the full allegiance of the Frontier. The marriage of blades, Greta murmured, finishing the thought. It's sealed. Ash looked at the 3 women, his warriors, his allies, his loves. They were not a prize. They were the pillars of his sovereignty, bound by blood, battle, and shared purpose. He smiled, pulling them closer. Good. Because the frontier is going to need a lot of repairs. Epilogue. The new era. 1 year later, the battle frontier had found its place. Recognized by a chastened Pokemon League. Now under the genuine leadership of Champion Lance. As an autonomous sovereign state, the pyramid had been permanently refitted and anchored in a massive, reconstructed battle tower. The true seat of the frontier's power. The tower was not a place of conflict, but a citadel of learning and connection. Ash sat at the head of a massive, circular council table in the renovated command spire. He wore a simple, dark Frontier Master's jacket, the brave symbol pinned proudly over his heart. He looked older, hardened, but utterly content. Pikachu was awake on the table, overseeing the proceedings with a watchful eye. He was not alone at the head of the table. Flanking him were his queens, each sitting in an identical, high-backed chair, sharing the weight of command. Anabel, serene and vital, managed foreign relations and psychic intelligence, her mind a vast, calm network over the entire region. Lucy, sharp and pragmatic, handled internal security, logistics, and counter-espionage, ensuring the trust was a dead memory. Greta, restless but focused, commanded the training corps and the vanguard, ensuring the frontier was always ready for the next threat. The Kanto League has ratified the trade agreements, Anabel stated, her voice calm and authoritative. The sanctuary zone is secure. And the latest batch of recruits is too slow, Greta grumbled. I need more fighters, not bureaucrats. You will get them, Lucy assured her, tapping her console, once the logistics are approved. Ash listened, his gaze sweeping over his partners. They were equals. A powerful triad of leaders who had accepted their destiny. A destiny that included the reckless, brilliant young man who had stumbled into their lives. Ash leaned back, the weight of the crown resting easily upon his head. The frontier is stable, Ash declared, his voice ringing with authority. Let the world know that the Master's decree stands. We will always protect the bond. He looked at his queens, and they returned his gaze, a shared, silent promise passing between the four of them. A commitment to a war that was only just beginning, and a love that was absolute. Any final motions? Ash asked, a familiar spark of challenge in his eyes. Lucy raised an eyebrow. Greta grinned. Anabel simply smiled. The frontier was safe. Chapter 10 end.